Hey everyone, welcome to the Bookish Wonderland. It's your host, Ari. And the other day I was thinking about bookish habits and trends and things that I was noticing in the book community, mostly on social media, but just something I've noticed, like how we discover books, how we review books, and just the whole social media influence on reading and discovering books and other readers. And I was just reflecting on it a little bit because there are a lot of things that I do now as a reader that I didn't do when I was younger as like a baby reader. And it's baffling to me because I feel like these newer habits have sort of changed my reading experience a little bit. And I was thinking, what if I went back to the habits of my youth, when I was young? And what would it be like in this new day and age of social media and book talk and everything else? And I was wondering, would it be better or would it be worse? Would things be different for me as a reader, or would it just feel the same? And so I was thinking back and really diving into some of the habits from when I was younger and debating on whether I should go back to them or not. And a lot of them, I was thinking it would be better if I did, simply because I feel like I will be returning to the root of my enjoyment in reading. So when I was a child, my parents are the ones who got me into reading. And I didn't go anywhere without a book in my hand or in my backpack. I always had something with me. And even though I would go through phases where maybe for a year, I wasn't reading any novels. I was only reading graphic novels and comics and manga, or I was mostly reading classic literature or, poetry and screenplays and things like that or whatever. I would go through phases of I'm only reading one particular thing, or I'm not reading the same novels that I'm used to, but I never really stopped reading. There was no break for me when it comes to reading. So for example, when I was really, really young, one bookish habit that I had was wandering around. Every time I would go to the library, because my parents would take me, or sometimes when I went to the bookstore, I would just find myself wandering the shelves and trying to find something new to read. My mom mostly took me to the bookstore so I could get homework done. But as a baby book nerd, I would be no, I want to go look at books on the shelves. I want to go find something new to read. And then sometimes I would treat that as my incentive or whatever. Hey, if I finish my homework, maybe I could bring a new book home, or I could check out some new books or something. And oftentimes the way I discovered new titles or new stories was through wandering. I would go up and down shelves. I would see a title or a cover that would interest me. Then I would pick it up, turn it over, read the back, or read the dust jacket if it was a hardcover, and see if it had an interesting storyline or plot. And if it did, then I would take it and go sit and read the first few pages, or read a random set of pages, just to see if the writing hooked me enough to where I'd be oh, this is the book that I want to read, so that I could take it home. Now, though, thanks to social media and everything, the way I discover new books is mostly through book content creators like myself, or book influencers, or if I go on my Fable or my Goodreads or something, and it'll try to recommend me books based off of what my followers have enjoyed or that my friends are reading. And I would sometimes look at the recommendations and be oh, I want to read it too. Other times I would question it. Am I really going to enjoy this book or not? And even though I'm older now, when I go to a bookstore or a library and I'm looking for something new to read on my own, and I just pick up books to read what they're about, I still, flip through the book. I still look at the dust jacket and try and get a sense of what it is about. But also now, because of social media, a thing that I do, and I feel like this is relatable for everybody, is that I'll pull out my phone and look up the book on Goodreads or Fable. Just type the title in and see the average star rating and be like, oh, it has an average of 3.5 stars or an average of 3 stars or 3.7. Maybe I won't like it as much because the rating is low. And come on, I know I'm not the only one who does this, but then sometimes I'm like, well, I'm looking at the rating. I'm not looking at the book. I'm not giving the book a real chance. There's a chance I might actually enjoy the book. And I might be that one person who I give it the 4 stars that it needs to push it over a 3.5 or something like that, I know averages don't really work like that, but a girl can dream. And I was thinking about that the other day because I was like, when I was younger, I didn't used to do that. Like, honestly, I didn't get a Goodreads until I was maybe in like middle school kind of sort of era, or just about to enter into high school, because that was my only social media that I had. I didn't have a Facebook. I didn't have MySpace when it was a thing. I didn't have Twitter back when it was still Twitter. And Instagram was kind of sort of fairly new, but I didn't have any sort of social media except for Goodreads. And I mostly used it as a database of, oh, here's a list of all the books I want. Because, when you wander around a bookstore or a library looking at a bunch of titles and stuff, you need a way to remember all the titles that you said, I might come back for this book towards, Now, Goodreads is like my search engine of looking up books and new releases and seeing what people think about it and letting that influence my desire or opinion towards a book. And I'm thinking to myself, that's gotta stop. Because I never used to do that. But it's become a habit that I've been doing for the past several years that I have to consciously tell myself to stop doing it. Now, especially recently, when I do go into a bookstore or a library just to wander and look for a new release, I have to resist the urge to pull out my phone. Now, if I do pull out my phone, it's usually to get a photo or a video of the book to either A, post it on social media, or B, to look it up on Goodreads later when I get home, or to see if I could find it through my Libby app to send to my Kindle, because I've become more of a Kindle girly over the past couple of years. And at first, it was Overdrive that I was using, but then I moved over to Libby along with my library, and I started using that more, and also Hoopla. I mostly use Hoopla for my audiobooks though, but still, the same principle applies, right? So I have to resist the urge to look up the Goodreads rating while I'm in the store. I have to make the determination for myself, hey, based off the back of this book, based off of what it's about, do I want it? Oh, let me go sit and try the book out. The first few pages seem interesting enough. Do I still want to read it? If I have the money or the desire to buy it, then I'll buy it and take it home with me. Otherwise, I'll probably snap a photo or a little quick video of it and go look for it on my Libby app later when I leave the store. And I have to leave the store first before I look for it, because if I don't see it, then I'm going to still be tempted to buy it. And due to the economy we're in right now, I can't be spending all my money on books like I used to. But it's still fun to discover new books on my own in that way. And I forgot how much fun it is and how much that influences me as a reader. And this is why, I was thinking about these habits, because I was honestly wondering, why did I stop doing these habits? And how do I stop doing the new habits that I've developed, right? For example, and here's something else that I was kind of sort of thinking about, the way I would discover books via word of mouth, through my friends, right? Because when I was young, I'm in school every single day. I see the same friends every single day, the same friend group. And the good thing about most of my friends when I was younger is that we were all readers in one way or another. Sometimes we would read different books. Sometimes we would all be reading the same thing, we had similar tastes and everything. And I remember, and here's where my example comes in. I remember when I was young, I was really getting into paranormal and fantasy, like paranormal fantasy, paranormal romance, kind of, sort of. And I remember there was this series, and I will kind of sort of date myself when I talk about it. There was this series called the Iron Face series by Julie Kagawa. And originally, back when I first discovered this series, originally there was only 3 books. There was The Iron King, which was the first book, The Iron Daughter, which was book 2, and The Iron Queen, which was book 3. And strangely enough, I discovered that series in Walmart. I was getting ready to leave for a trip to Panama City Beach, and I needed reading material for the trip because, again, I was always constantly reading something. And so I saw them in Walmart. I at least saw the first 2 books in Walmart, and I bought them and I read them on my trip. So by the time I got back from my trip and went back to school, I was on book 3. And one of my friends was like, "Oh, what is that you're reading?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a book about this girl whose brother gets kidnapped to the Fey realm and is replaced with a changeling. And she ends up going there and finds out that, her best friend is a fairy, and like a bunch of stuff happens, and there's an interesting love triangle and yada, yada, yada." This was my ACOTAR before ACOTAR even existed. Okay? And if you don't know what ACOTAR is, that's A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's a very popular fairy series that I unfortunately will not be reading. And do not come for me when I say that. That is my personal choice. I probably would have enjoyed it a lot when I was younger, around the time that I read the Iron Face series. But now that I'm older, I'm kind of like, yeah, no thanks. I missed that train when it was in the station. But all of y'all who was able to write it, I hope you had a good time. But I remember telling my friend about that series, about the Iron Face series, and they were like, "Oh, cool, I want to read it." And I'm like, "Well, here's books 1 and 2. You can borrow it from me." And then that was with one friend, and then another friend, and then another friend. So now I have a couple of friends reading the first book, a couple of friends reading the second book, and here I am almost done with the third book. And then we found out that there was a 4th book coming out, and I found out through Goodreads. But we found out there was a 4th book, and then we all needed to get our hands on it and read it together and like figure out like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? I miss that feeling of having bookish friends like that. Now that I'm older, it feels kind of harder to have book friends. Most of my book friends are online, and don't get me wrong, I love them. I love when we talk about books and give each other recommendations and things like that, and post about the books that we just finished or are currently reading. But sometimes you kind of sort of miss being able to go to the bookstore together or go to the library together and shop for books together and then talk about what you just read. The closest thing you can get to that experience, especially as an adult, is joining a book club. But then also, depending on how the book club is ran and what exactly you're reading, and if it's like a big book club or a small book club, like it's not exactly the same, especially because, book clubs, at least the ones that I've been in, tend to pick their books based off of a democracy. And sometimes you're not happy with the majority vote. That's all I'm going to say. And so you decide not to read it. And then you decide, well, I can't go to the meeting, or I'm going to go to the meeting, but I didn't read this book. I'm going to be the odd one out or something like that. Like, that's the closest thing you could get to that experience now. And it's not the same. Like, I miss being able to gather with my friends at lunch or on the school bus and talk about what we were reading, or all of us reading together, even if we were reading something different. Like, I remember when I was, again, still in middle school, and this is when I got into the Twilight series, reading it, not watching the movies. 2 different things, 2 different experiences. But I remember I had a friend who also read Twilight. Like, none of my other friends had read Twilight yet. They heard of the movies. Of course, the first movie, I believe, came out, and the second movie was about to come out or something like that, or being made. The timeline is a little blurry in my head, so bear with me. But I remember I was in the middle of reading Eclipse, and I had this friend who was reading Breaking Dawn. Like, she was already a good chunk through it, because remember, that book is a hefty book. It is very hefty. And she would be like, "Oh my gosh, you're reading this book too? What team are you on? Are you with Jacob or are you with Edward?" And then we will have a discussion about it. And I'll be like, I like Jacob a little bit better, because I'm always like a person who roots for the underdog or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And she'll be like, no, I like Edward. It just something about him. And then we would go into that, and then she'd be like, "Oh, and when you get to this part in Breaking Dawn," and I have to like shut her up and be like, "Shh, don't spoil it for me. Don't tell me. I'm not even done with the second book yet, but I'm getting there." Even that was enjoyable to me. And of course, like, my friends were respectful. We never really spoiled anything for each other. We were tempted to, but we never really did, or at least not that I can remember. If we actually did, I mentally blocked it out. I'm sorry, not sorry. But now, as an adult, I don't even have that. Usually when I catch up with friends over what we just read or anything like that, it's like way after the fact, or like months later or something, or not even in person. I go on their Goodreads or their Fable and read their review of it. And that's the closest thing that I can get. And I miss it, because I remember when I was a kid and the time to talk about books with your friends was in the morning on the school bus, or in the afternoon on the school bus, or when we were required to go to the library at certain parts during the week, certain parts during the day. At least with my school, I remember like library field trips. And we will walk around looking at shelves and be like, "Oh, I read this series. Have you read it?" Pointing it at each other, recommending it to each other. Occasionally sitting together at lunch and reading together. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. And it's a little sad, and I kind of miss it. But also at the same time, it's like, well, we're adults now. That's not really possible, but I can make it possible. Maybe I can hit up a couple of my friends and be like, "Hey, let's have a bookstore date. Let's meet at Barnes & Noble, this particular Barnes & Noble at this particular time. Let's walk around for an hour and shop, then sit and have like silent reading, and then sit for another hour and then talk," or something like that, or whatever. Because trust me, I can spend a few hours in the bookstore. I have friends, a brother, and a partner who could testify to the fact that I would spend a day in the bookstore if I had to. Which was another thing, another bookish habit of mine that I've kind of sort of gone back to, is going to the bookstore or library just to hang out. Not necessarily to get new books, although getting new books is always a perk, but just to hang out, just to go to chill and read, or maybe to sit and do work, or maybe just to get a sense of peace, because bookstores have always been my happy place. Well, really libraries, but of course bookstores too, because with some bookstores, they're either next to or close by a cafe or coffee shop. So you could stop in, get a cozy drink, a snack, and then go and wander around and look at books and stuff. Other bookstores, they're like incorporating some sort of cafe as a part of their store. And then of course there's Barnes & Noble, who has a cafe in their store, so it's connected to like the romance section or something. You can pop in line for a drink, and then while they're making the drink, you could go look around for a minute, and then they'll call your name out, and you'll go get your drink and then come back to look at all the books on the shelves. Like, I loved hanging out. Like, when I was young, a lot of the times when my mom took me to the library, it was to help me, like, to take me so I could get my homework done, so I could be somewhere away from like the TV, away from any distractions, and just do my homework or whatever school projects I had. And oftentimes she left me alone. And I can admit this now that I'm not living in her house anymore. She would leave me alone, and I would not do my homework. I would not do my project. I would procrastinate for the longest time. And sometimes I would get up and go wandering around the shelves, or I would sit there and read, or I would sit there and maybe write, or sit there and do nothing but just breathe. Like, I needed like that sense of peace, that sense of calm. And books provided that for me. The quiet, the smell of pages, all of that. It provided that for me, and I loved it. So I've been going to bookstores and libraries now strictly to hang out. Now, if I happen to have the money, or if I'm in the market to look for a new book, then yeah, I'm going to get up, I'm going to wander around and look for a new title or something. But this also brings me to the next bookish habit of mine. When I was a kid, the library was my bookstore. I did not buy books that often, but when I did, unless it was required reading for school or a gift from my parents or my family, a lot of my books I would buy myself, but I had to save my money for it. So whenever I got birthday money or Christmas money or a Barnes& and Noble gift card, I would hoard it and save it and make a list of the books I really, really, really wanted. Like either it was going to take too long for the library to get it, or I just couldn't wait. I'm itching to read it now, and I just want to read this book as soon as possible. I'm going to go buy it so I could read it. I would have to save my money for it. And this was back when paperbacks were like $10 a piece. Now, YA paperbacks range between $12 to $15, and an adult paperback ranges between $17.99 to $25.99. And it's ridiculous. I hate it. But again, it's the world we're living in right now. It's the freaking economy. But when I was a kid, $10 for a book was a lot of money. So I would save my money. So say my grandmother gave me like $20 for my birthday, and my grandfather gave me like $25 Barnes & Noble gift card, and my other grandmother would give me like $15, cash or whatever. And I'm like, I have just a little over $50 or so, give or take. And I want these 3 books as a part of this fantasy series. Like, for example, we'll use the Iron Fae as an example. I want books 1, 2, and 3. Books 1, 2, and 3 is $10 a piece. So I need at least like $30 plus tax, and I have a little over $50. So I have money left over to get another book if I want to, or save it till around Christmas. And then when Christmas comes around and I get more Christmas money, add it to the pot and then buy more books. That was how my brain worked at the time, and it still kind of sort of does do that. But when I was a kid, I would do that, and then I'll go to my mom or my dad, usually my dad, because my mom would occasionally be working on the weekends sometimes, and I would be like, hey, can you take me to the bookstore around this time on Saturday so I could go buy new books? I promise I won't spend no more than 30 minutes or an hour or something like that or whatever. Because usually when I ask my parents to take me to the bookstore, it's because I wanted to go for a specific thing. And I also knew that my parents both worked and was both pretty busy and had lives and stuff. And I didn't want to take up too much time in their schedule. So I'm like, I promise I'm going in here for this one particular book or these 2 particular books. Once I find them, I'll buy them and I'll come back to the car. Simple as that. Then when I got older and I got to college and I got me a part-time job, that was the closest thing I had to like real adult money, to where I could be like, oh, I could just buy what I want. Not necessarily. I did have to pay for food, and I did have like financial aid, scholarships, and my parents paying for tuition, room and board, groceries, emergency expenses, like with my car when I finally got a car and all that and blah, blah, blah. But my part-time paycheck, I would look at it and be like, I could just go to the bookstore and go crazy, buy like 5, 6 books at a time. I had to stop doing that. A lot of my money was going towards buying books. It was an addiction. Book shopping is a very, very fun hobby. Like, you know how you meet people and they're just addicted to just buying shoes or jewelry or handbags or whatever, and you just look at them and be like, why are you wasting your money? Yeah, no, that's me, but with books. I don't do it with clothes and stuff. I do it with books, and especially when I was in college. And so now that I'm older, and again, the economy, I'm like, I got bills to pay. I got to pay for rent. I got other stuff to do. I can't be spending my money on books like that anymore. So guess what I started doing? I've started going back to the library more so than ever. Usually, again, on my phone or my iPad to get on Libby, because I send most of my books to my Kindle now anyway. That thing goes with me everywhere, and we'll get into that in a second. But if I do happen to go to a physical library to look for a particular book or something or whatever, that's the closest thing I'm going to get to book shopping. It's just going to the library and picking up a bunch of books and checking them out, and whether I read them or not, and I get to return them, and it's no sweat off my back. If I do buy books now, usually it's because it's a special edition of some sort. Like it has a really pretty cover redesign, or it has like very beautiful edges, or it's a favorite book of mine that I did read on my Kindle and I need to have it physically, or it's to complete a collection. Like, say, for example, I have all of Nick Stone's books, right? Like I have most of her YA and I have her newest adult book, but I have all of her books and I need the rest of them, So I'll do that just to complete the collection on my shelf. But I don't just buy books anymore. And then, of course, I will buy books if I plan to get it signed by the author. If I'm planning to go to a book event or a book festival and the author's going to be there signing their work, then I'll buy the book physically. That's it. Everything else, library on my Kindle. Easy peasy. And speaking of my Kindle, that's another bookish habit from my youth that I never actually gave up, honestly. Like it just stuck with me and just transformed into different ways. And that's taking a book with me everywhere I go. Like there are people that I meet where I'll tell them, oh, I'm a reader. I love to read. I'm passionate about books, blah, blah, blah. I'm always reading something. They be like, really? I wish I could read like that, but I can never find the time, or I just don't have the time to read. And I'll look at them and I'll be like, I feel like that's a lie. Like, not to say that they're lying. Like, I don't know their lives. They probably are mad busy and can't really find time to sit down and read and like they want to, and this and that. But also at the same time, when I carry a book with me everywhere I go, I find pockets of time to read. So when I was a kid, I could not go anywhere without a book. Like even when my dad would take my entire family to like work events, a banquet or a party or whatever, I would hide a book under my dress or under my coat or jacket and sneak it in with me, because Lord knows I will crawl under the banquet table when no one is looking and sit and read my book, whatever I was reading. I packed at least like 2 books every time we went on a vacation or a trip, whether it be a short 5-hour road trip or like a plane ride across the country or something like that. I had to have at least 2 books with me. One that I was currently reading and a backup book just in case I finished it, Of course, in my school backpack, there was always a book. Every time I went out with my friends, there was always a book. And don't get me started on when I got my first e-reader. That changed the game forever. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Like all of my books that I want to read digitally on this small little device that could fit into anything. Like it's small enough to fit into like my smallest purse. Not the smallest purse. Now, keep in mind, when I do go purse or bag shopping, I do bring my e-reader with me and I hold it up to the bag. And if it can't fit inside the bag, then I won't buy it because I need it to go with me everywhere. Before I got my car, when I was like, right after I graduated high school, I was mostly taking public transportation. So the train and the bus. When I was on the bus or the train, I was reading on my Kindle all the time. Or if I was reading a physical book, then I was reading a physical book. When I am going to run errands and stuff, if I got to wait somewhere, like if I'm going to a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment and I got to wait, I'm reading. During the election, when everyone was out voting, because I went to go vote one day after work and the line was so long, it went out the building. And so I had to stand in this long line just to vote. And I was so bored the first 5 minutes I was standing there. And then I realized, oh, my e-reader's in my purse. I just started a new manga. let me finish it. And so by the time it was my turn to to present my ID and get my little card to put in the machine to vote, I finished the manga. So, and then of course there are people who like wake up early in the morning to read. Like I know a few people who wake up at like 5 a.m. to read, or who stay up late to read. Like you can find time to read. I just think it's easier if you always have a book with you. Whether it be digitally, like on your phone or on an e-reader, or it could be physically, like put it in your tote bag or your backpack or whatever. Like I sometimes when people be like, I don't really have enough time to read, I look at you and I be like, I feel like you're lying. Not to say that you are, but something in me is like, no, you probably have time to read. You just don't recognize it because you don't have a book with you all the time. Because trust me, if you had a book with you all the time, you will find pockets of time to read. So that's a habit that never really went away. I cannot go anywhere without my e-reader. I've even been on dates and had my e-reader in my bag just in case, it went south or something, like whatever. I read at sporting events because I don't even pay attention to games and stuff. Like I will go to a softball game or a football game and I'm in the stands and I'm reading a book. Everybody else is cheering, yay, go team. And I'm like, oh, he just killed her. Like that. Like, I'm that type of book nerd. And that's a habit that I'm not ashamed of, and I never will be. And if you try to shame me, then you're the problem, not me. But I was thinking about these habits and I was like, this really does transform your reading experience. And I really also want to start not relying on social media as much to sway my opinion of books. Because again, like I used to get book opinions from my friends word of mouth in person. But I also used to get recommendations from like my teachers when I was in school based off of our required reading, if I vibed with it or not. Some teachers might be like, oh, hey, then maybe you should try and read this instead. Other times I would discover books on my own based off of what I just read. Instead of trusting some algorithm or whatever, I would go to the library and be like, I just finished Frankenstein. What other classic literature book about monsters is there? Oh, wait, I see this book, Jekyll and Hyde. Is that a monster book? Let me pick it up and find out. Oh, whoa. Yeah, I'm gonna read this. Like that would literally be my thought process. So I was really just thinking about these habits and wondering what it will be like to go back to them. I am very grateful in a lot of ways for the habits I had when I was a kid, and I'm grateful that I know how to do them so I could find ways to reincorporate them into my adult life. But we'll see. That's really it. That's all I have for today. If you have any bookish habits from your youth or that you do that you want to get, or things that you want to get back to or whatever, let me know in the comments section. Reach out to me and tell me. I would love to have these discussions with you guys. But anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble. Tune in next week for another episode of Aries Bookish Wonderland. I look forward for you to fall down the rabbit hole once again. And have a wonderful day or evening whenever you're listening to this. Bye.